Democratic candidates are gearing up for their second round of debates this primary season. 20 contenders have qualified for the two-night event in Detroit, Michigan. On Tuesday, Senators Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren will be center stage. Wednesday features the party's frontrunner, former Vice President Joe Biden. He'll be flanked by some of his sharpest critics in this race, Senators Cory Booker and Kamala Harris. They're all descending on what's become a key battleground state. President Trump won Michigan by less than a percentage point in 2016. CBSN political reporter Caitlin Huey-Burns spoke with Michigan's Governor Gretchen Whitmer. The Democrat had this advice for candidates courting voters in this state.
I think it's critical to show up. When you show up and you actually listen, you can't stray from the things that matter because you're listening and you're learning every day. Stay focused on the things that really matter. People in Michigan don't care about the president's Twitter feed. We care about feeding our families. We care about ensuring that our kids can have a better quality of life than we have. And we've got a lot of work to do, but I think that's what we want. We're hardworking, good people. We want a president who can get things done for us.
And Caitlin Huey-Burns joins me now from Detroit, and we welcome back Sean Sullivan. He's a CBSN political contributor and reporter for The Washington Post. Welcome to both of you. Caitlin, the city of Detroit filed for bankruptcy about 6 years ago. The area has shown strong economic growth since, but about 38% of its residents live in poverty. How can we expect the candidates to tailor their messages to the Rust Belt while they're there in Detroit?
Well, I think they're going to talk about the Rust Belt by talking about cities like Detroit. There's a big conversation in the Democratic primary right now about how to win back these states in the Midwest that Trump won that traditionally have gone for Democrats. Michigan is one of them. You mentioned how close that race was in 2016. In 2018, Democrats won several seats here statewide, including the governor, and so they believe they have somewhat of a roadmap. But what they really want candidates to do is talk about the economy, talk about ways in which, yes, it has improved, but that it doesn't work necessarily for everybody, and to focus on kind of the inner cities and urban areas as well as outside. I talked to the Attorney General earlier today, and she mentioned candidates should talk about things like consumer protection here in Detroit, talk about the economy as it relates to people's individual wages, as it relates to their household incomes, and as it relates to how the government is protecting them in that. So I think we'll hear a lot from the candidates about Detroit, and I think we'll see them try to broaden their economic message to appeal to places in the Midwest.
And Sean, I want to pull from some of your recent reporting. You say former Vice President Joe Biden has shifted the most dramatically between the last debate and now, adding, quote, the candidate who 3 weeks ago said he saw no reason to dig into the past records of his opponents has been doing just that. So how much pressure is Biden's campaign feeling at this point in the cycle, Sean?
A lot of pressure right now, Elaine. When you look at the way that he prepared for the first debate, it's very, very different, almost a night and day difference between that and the lead up to this debate. Before the first debate, we saw a candidate in Joe Biden who was laser focused on President Trump. All he wanted to talk about was defeating Trump and presenting himself as the strongest candidate to do that. And as he was doing that, he largely looked past many of his opponents and did not seem eager to get in a back and forth with any one of them over any specific issues. And then we saw the debate happen. We saw Senator Harris go after him. And the result of that was a lot of Democrats saw him as somebody who was not prepared to go head to head with an opponent. So now what we're seeing is a very different candidate in terms of the way Biden is dealing with his Democratic opponents. We're seeing him draw strong contrast with them on health care. We're seeing him draw strong contrast with them on ideology. We've seen Joe Biden mention his opponents by name, bringing up Senator Harris, bringing up Senator Warren, bringing up Senator Sanders. And so this is a candidate now who appears much more eager to debate on the issues and in terms of, preparation for the presidency with these candidates than he was a few weeks ago. The question is how that will translate to the debate stage, whether voters will see him in a different light than they did last time. But certainly he is under a tremendous amount of pressure right now. And a lot of Democrats, we've talked talked to in our reporting have said, look, he cannot have another debate like he did on the first round of debates. He's got to do better. He's got to project more strength. And so certainly, when you look at these two debates, when you look at the dynamic between these candidates, there really isn't any other candidate right now that appears to be under more pressure than Joe Biden.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how that pressure then actually affects how he does in the debate. So Senator Kamala Harris saw a surge in support after the last debate, in part because she confronted Joe Biden on stage for his record on federal busing policies. So, Caitlin, can we expect more candidates to directly target Biden this time around? And if so, how?
I do think so, Elaine. I think a lot of these candidates saw how Kamala Harris did in that debate and what happened after, the bump that she got in the polls, how they were able to take that message and kind of carry it through. We already kind of got a preview of that last week when I was in Detroit covering the NAACP conference, when Cory Booker took direct aim at Joe Biden over his criminal justice record, going after him for supporting, bringing that through, that 1994 crime bill that he said led to mass incarceration that affected people of color and made for all these issues that we have right now. So expect Cory Booker to really go after Biden on that. And I think you'll see other candidates try to take him on because they want to show electability. They want to kind of knock Biden out as the front runner and establish themselves as the most electable against Donald Trump. I think you're also going to keep an eye on how Biden responds. Last week, again, when we were in Detroit, we asked him, was he going to be less polite this time around? Because he says he was caught off guard by Kamala Harris. And he kind of said that he'll do this with a smile, but we know that his campaign is preparing for this target to be on his back. And they're also preparing to defend his record and perhaps go after some of his opponents if it warrants, especially on issues like health care.
Interesting. So Rahm Emanuel penned an open memo to the candidates today. The former Chicago mayor and chief of staff to President Obama warned, quote, "Before our party promises health care coverage to undocumented immigrants, a position not even Ted Kennedy took, let's help the more than 30 million Americans who are a single illness away from financial ruin." Sean, how are progressive policies dictating the 2020 conversation? And are Democrats like Rahm Emanuel concerned that these stances hurt the party in swing states like Michigan?
Yeah, Democrats are concerned, and what we're hearing and seeing from Rahm Emanuel in what he wrote is a sentiment that I'm hearing from a lot of Democrats across the country, which is that they believe the best way to prepare for taking on President Trump and, in their hopes, defeating him is to stick to the playbook that was successful in 2018 and focus on what Democrats called kitchen table issues, the economy, health care, not fighting the campaign on issues that are divisive and that are, going to be issues that polarize the electorate. And so some Democrats watched the first round of debates, and became alarmed with what they saw and the issues that Democrats were talking about, the positions, which indeed, in many cases, were more liberal than we have seen in past presidential campaigns. And so right now there is a tension in the Democratic Party. On one side, you do have Democrats like Rahm Emanuel who are saying, hold on a second, let's focus on the more non-controversial stances that we underscored in 2018. But then you have other Democrats who say, look, we need to rally our base. We need to ensure that our base turns out in this election in a way that they didn't in 2016. We need to make sure that young voters turn out in a way that they didn't in 2016. And the way to do that is to not shy away from these issues, not adopt a position that is seen by many party activists as too moderate, as too centrist. And the way to do that is to be bolder on these issues, whether it's immigration, whether it's health care, whether it's any number of issues. And so we're seeing that tension sort of play out in this campaign and across the country. And indeed, among the candidates themselves, you have somebody in Joe Biden who is more closely aligned with somebody like Rahm Emanuel. But then you have candidates like Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren who are going to be debating on the first night of this two-night set of debates, who are much more liberal in their stances. And so this presents a challenge for the party. What is their overarching vision? It's still being decided right now as these candidates debate each other and as they fight each other for the nomination.
Right, a huge challenge here for the Democratic Party as it moves forward. All right, Caitlin Huey-Burns and Sean Sullivan, thank you both so much. And CBS